Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose here on Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. And this is hour number 2 of the show. In the show, things we will be discussing include, but are not limited to, Lane Kiffin gets John Franklin III from Auburn. Dabo Swinney thinks that there should be a college preseason, but doesn't offer any insights onto exactly how it is that would work. Steve Spurrier thinks that Antonio Callaway could be on his last chance, which I think is impressive when you consider the list of chances that Antonio Callaway has received. And Lucky Whitehead, should we call him Rodney again? But before we jump into all of those things, let's talk about Alabama. Alabama is the best school in college football because they haven't lost anything from their title run last year that would suggest so. Now, this is supposed to be an Alabama down year. When I say they haven't lost anything, they've lost a lot of talent. But Alabama, year after year after year, proves, if nothing else, that they are really good at replacing talent, of getting guys to step up and replace the guys that they just lost. Last year, might I point out, and that I remind you, was supposed to be an Alabama down year. If you're going to challenge Alabama, if you're going to beat them in the SEC West, if you're going to beat them in the title game, which there's a handful of teams that think that they might have a chance. Florida thinks they might have a chance in the title game, and Auburn believes that they have a chance in the West. If you're going to beat Alabama, you're going to need to be damn good because they have weapons all over the place on both sides of the football, and it doesn't appear that they've slowed down in any way, right? SEC Country did a really good breakdown of Alabama. If you're projecting the starters for Alabama, Jalen Hurts, I think, would be the obvious starter at quarterback. He's the offensive player of the year. And from what I understand, from what reporters are saying about training camp so far with the Crimson Tide, is that he's an improved passer, Jalen Hurts is. And honestly, that was his biggest weakness, is that he was a very inconsistent passer. He wasn't very accurate. And I think down the field, his throws were hit or miss to begin with. And as the year went on and teams got more used to him and he, I think, got a little less confident, those throws were less and less, and they were certainly less accurate as the season went on. When you look at Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough being at running back, they could be the best backfield duo in the entire country. I'm sure Nick Chubb and Sony Michel in Georgia would have something to say about that, but I find it very difficult to believe that a healthy Bo Scarborough and a Damian Harris, that you would have any reasonable plan for slowing those guys down. Now, granted, they both do have to be healthy, and Bo Scarborough has fought with injuries before, but goodness, when they're on, right? At wide receiver, and I think, honestly, this is where Alabama is ironically most dangerous, because I can't think of a single time where Alabama has been considered dangerous at receiver. Now, this is a school that's had Julio Jones, so I get it. They've had the talent to be truly dangerous at receiver, but the game plan for Alabama was never to truly be dangerous at receiver. If Alabama's going to continue to throw the ball, continue to open up their offense and move the ball downfield, then with Calvin Ridley, Robert Foster, Cam Sims, one of the most exciting groups of receivers in all of college football. They've got the deep field speed with Calvin Ridley. Foster is incredibly fast, and Cam Sims has got great hands. He's very reliable. And they're all good blockers because that's what you need to be able to do in Alabama. The running game is still the king, and all of these guys can do that as well. They're very dangerous at wide receiver. The Tide are. Like, if this is a down year, I'm really confused as to what it is that that's supposed to be. Now, granted, they do take a step back, I think, at some points, at some positions. Tight end is one. Miller Forrestall looks like he's going to be the starter at tight end for Alabama. And it's hard to argue against that. I think that is a downgrade from O.J. Howard, who is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But again, Alabama, the depth there it's still Forrestall and Hentges, whose name I hope I'm not mispronouncing, Hale Hentges. at tight end, with Major Tennyson backing them up. But they're still deep. I just think that O.J. Howard was so good. I don't know that anyone in this tight end group is going to live up to that. At offensive line, the top 5 unit that's been in spring training has been kept together, and that's Jonah Williams, Ross Piersbacher, Bradley Bozeman, Lester Cotton, and Matt Womack. And that unit has been playing together for a while now, so the continuity is there, and that helps. I don't know if this offensive line is as brutal as last year's offensive line in terms of the physicality and the strength, but they're an Alabama offensive line, so I can't imagine that they're bad. I say this being, in full disclosure, I am a football fan, and like many football fans, don't understand offensive line with the level of nuance that I understand a whole lot of other skill positions, because we all just pay attention to the skill positions. Defensive line, they have some quality depth on the defensive line. I don't know if these guys are going to be as strong and powerful a unit as last year's unit with Daron Payne, Raekwon Davis, and Deshaun Hand. But the fact of the matter is they've got a lot of guys at that position, so they can sustain injuries, I think, better than most people, and they would be able to even sustain fatigue better than most people. Again, I think inside linebacker is another position where they take a step backwards. But again, like Alabama, year after year, you say they're taking a step backwards. You say this is a downward cycle, and then they prove you wrong. And how many times are you going to be wrong with Alabama? Because I'm tired of being wrong with Alabama on this. And I think that there's just a certain level of like, I don't know if I'm just tired of seeing Alabama and I want to see somebody else win or what, but like every year I expect the downward turn, and every year there is no downward turn. They are more or less the same high quality football team that they were. I expect their offense to be much better, much more explosive, and I don't know if Alabama can win a national title with this team. They should be able to. They are the odds-on favorites. I agree they're the odds-on favorites. Where I'm sowing the seeds of doubt is the fact that Alabama has become a much more offensive-minded team. Not to say that the defense has dropped off in quality at all. I think this defensive unit might be a little weaker than last year's, but what do I know? I said last year's was going to be weaker as well, and I was wrong about that. But I will say this, that they have become a much more offensively reliant unit, and gone are the days, I think, where it's just going to be Alabama running the ball down your throat, and then you can't score on them. I think this is a unit that can be scored on. Now, I don't know to what degree and necessarily at what levels, but it is a unit that can be scored on. This is not an impossible unit to score on. Granted, if you're trying to score on this unit through the air, at corner and at safety, Alabama has a lot of talent. At corner, Anthony Averett, who locks down the right side for Alabama, could potentially be a scary person to throw to. Tony Brown is not as locked down, but he's pretty versatile on the left side. And at safety, Alabama, really deep. Really, really deep. Minka Fitzpatrick and Ronnie Harrison. So good luck throwing the ball deep on Alabama. But if you can run the ball and if you can throw into those intermediate zones, you might be able to score on this Crimson Tide team possibly. And if that's the case, they're going to need their offense to step up. Now, what ends up happening is like the offense did step up last year too. Like last year's defensive unit was a unit you really could not score on very well. But the offense stepped up anyway, right? Like in the moments, in the games where the defense struggled, which they struggled against 3 quarterbacks last year: Austin Allen, Deshaun Watson, Chad Kelly. In those moments where the defense struggled, offense stepped up in every game except for really the national title game. As the season went on, the offense took a back seat and seemed to slide further and further back. If their offense can stay consistent and they can score lots, I really find it hard to believe that anybody's beaten Alabama this year. Like, I just do. I get it. I just find it very difficult to believe. But if the offense is inconsistent coming down the stretch like they were last year, which I have serious doubts about. This is second-year Jalen Hurts, right? This is peak Damian Harris. If you can have healthy Bo Scarborough, I mean, I don't know what you do there. I really don't know what you do there. I'm saying we keep saying that Alabama's going to have a downward cycle, and at what point do we acknowledge that this school does not have a downward cycle? As long as Nick Saban is in Alabama drawing breath on this earth, they're not going to have a downward cycle. That's their downward cycle. When he's gone, right? When Nick Saban decides to walk away from football, that's when the downward cycle happens for Alabama, maybe. But it ain't happening while he's there. He's just too good. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Now, I didn't talk very much about what happened this weekend at Charlottesville because I think that people turn to sports as an escape. I do often like to talk about race relations and gender relations on this show, but I try to talk about those things in as much as they relate to sports. I do not try and just hand you my political opinions regardless of whatever the situation is. I usually try and give you my opinions as it relates to sports, and then maybe you disagree with me or agree, and that's fine. I like the Colin Kaepernick thing is a thing I like to talk about, but I talk about Colin Kaepernick as it relates to sports. If someone were protesting in some other industry in some other fashion, like it wouldn't come up here, right? And I understand the events of Charlottesville are impactful enough that it does warrant talking about, even if this is not a sports show. I just feel like I don't know how much I can add to the conversation with regards to saying something that has not already been said. But I will talk about Charlottesville here because Bart Scott of the NFL, he believes that if you want to see the end of the Colin Kaepernick-like protests, forget about it. We have not seen the end of these protests because of Charlottesville. That Bart Scott believes, and I agree, by the way, that the events at Charlottesville will prompt more players to have some kind of protest or some kind of awareness in games. And people don't like that. Fans specifically do not like that because you go to sports as your escape. You go to sports to escape from your job that may or may not be cruddy, that you don't like. You go to sports to escape from maybe a family situation that's not so great. And when sports isn't really politics, that to me, I think, is when people try to enjoy it the most because this is a break from reality. And then when athletes start pulling reality back into your sports, I find that people do have a problem with that. And I understand why you would have a problem with that. The reason why an athlete's going to do this to you, though, is because they're a human being, too. And there are certain issues that are of levels of importance so high, and the athlete's platform is so big that it is impossible for them to not have this thing on their heart and not bring it into the game and make others aware of the absolute craziness, right? Like people have been talking about being black in America and how odd and weird it is, but I've always been of the mindset that we've been moving in the right direction. And this entire time, I have believed we have been moving in the right direction. But what happened in Charlottesville proves to me we are not at all moving in the right direction. We have people who are white supremacists walking in the streets. We have people who are walking around with Nazi flags, which is so un-American that I want to vomit everywhere. We literally had a war about this. Walking around chanting Nazi slogans. And look, people used to have some level of shame about this back in the 60s. I mean, the Ku Klux Klan used to wear masks. These people are unmasked, walking the streets, spouting the most hateful rhetoric, saying the most un-American stuff. And it's racist and it's wrong. And for some reason, you see it and you're going to take a step backwards and go, wow, we're not moving forwards. We thought we were moving forwards. If you want to say that those people are the vocal minority, that's fine. But you got to understand that if you are someone of color in this country, how absolutely hurtful it is to see that kind of protest and that kind of mindset and then see the president not condemn them. It's insanity. And if you think when you watch your sports leagues with mostly black athletes, that's going to be your break from reality this season, I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. Right? Like, we can all agree that what happened at Charlottesville was absolutely disturbing in every sense of the word. This is not the America I grew up in. Right? People do things and say things that are racist and sexist all the time. Right? I understand where I have certain behaviors and certain mindsets that can be sexist as a guy. The issue here is to try to be better. That's always been America. That's how we got to where we are, is that Americans are not perfect, but we try to be better. Right? We are the best of every culture and every idea. We try. You cannot make this America that I live in, this America that I also love, into some safe haven for white supremacy and hateful rhetoric and hateful speech, and expect silence to be the response. It's not going to be silence. And again, if you are someone who partakes in college basketball and the NBA and college football and the NFL, you are going to start to hear rumbling. Most of the people you are watching are black. And that has to mean something. And when those people decide to speak up and say something, however it is that they say it, listen and try not to be offended and try not to be defensive about it, okay? Because everybody that's protesting isn't saying you right now listening to the radio, listening on noogaradio.com or listening in your car, no one is saying that you are a racist. I'm not saying you are. But I'm saying we live in a country right now where you can be openly that and have people go, not that bad. That's insanity. We've had veterans of World War II fight Nazis. How are there Nazis in America? In America? Here? How is that here? Someone explain to me how that's here and how that's okay. And how, if you are anybody in this country, that's not disgusting to you on the worst level. We fought them. How are they here? So yes, when you tune into your sports this season, this Sunday, these upcoming Sundays, you're going to see and hear some kind of protest. And by the way, I have to point this out. Protests are supposed to shock you, right? Like a protest is supposed to do something you're not supposed to see. You're not supposed to feel. Like, it makes you feel uncomfortable. That's what a protest does by its nature. You can protest peacefully. You can protest without breaking the law and still do something with shock value. And you're going to see some of it. I don't know where you're going to see it. I don't pretend to be close enough to any professional athletes that I can tell you and point you in the direction of finding any of these guys and what they're going to do. I can't purport to tell you where it's going to show up and where it's going to pop up. But you're watching a league that's mostly black. Most of the sports that we enjoy as Americans, because we do not like soccer, we do not like tennis very much. Most of these sports that we enjoy as Americans are played mostly by black people. And again, I'm not saying that the average American feels the way that a white supremacist in Charlottesville does, but that open display of hatred, that's going to be challenged by somebody somewhere, and an athlete with a very large platform feels the need to challenge it. Anybody with a platform feels the need to challenge it. You should say what's right. You should stand up for what is absolutely right. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. We're try and see if we can make this a little bit more lighthearted, but I have no idea how that's going to happen. Next.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Day 2 of Carol Gaddy being held in contempt of court as a political prisoner in Sequatchie County for refusing to allow a search of her home. Governor Bill Haslam, he's squawking like a chicken. He wants a Confederate monument removed at the state capitol. A bust of Nathan Bedford Forrest has stood there for years, and now Governor Bill Haslam wants it gone. This comes after riotous vandals tore down a statue in Durham, North Carolina. Chattanooga cops pulled over a vehicle on Rossville Boulevard to check and see if it was stolen. Then, gunshots rang out. Police returned fire, hitting the man in the car. He sped away. He was found in East Ridge, taken to the hospital, and has been arrested. 33-year-old Langdon Strickland was gunned down on South Kelly Street early Monday afternoon. The police say it happened on the 500 block. When cops got there, they found the victim laying in a pool of blood. He was rushed to the hospital. Violent Crimes Bureau investigators now trying to track down the gunman.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Expect partly cloudy and muggy weather out there through your nighttime. Overnight lows into the lower 70s. Now for your midweek, more typical summertime weather returns. Partly cloudy, hot and humid afternoons. Only isolated afternoon showers and storms through Thursday and Friday. Highs 90 to 92. Good news for folks who love fried chicken. KFC's original recipe fried chicken has been and always will be delicious. Get it for lunch in a $5 fill-up. That's KFC. It's still finger-licking good. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
Jim lost 84 pounds of fat in just 3 months. 84 pounds of fat in just 3 months without a single powdered meal or shake, no diet pills, no gimmicks. He is a cardiac nurse, and he knew that if he didn't do something, he would be the next one laying on the table getting stents in his heart. RSVP now to join us for our free health and wellness seminar at 240-440-1379. This will be our only seminar in Chattanooga, 240-440-1379.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. EJ Pelton Company, 332-3339.
When you shop online for a weapon, you avoid the sales tax. But now you can buy local at Shooter Supply, and you'll do just as well, if not better. Here's how. 10% off of ammo and accessories, or 20% off of the handgun permit class, or you can get 20% off the range membership. You deduct the taxes online, and at Shooters, you do even better. And let Shooter's consignment program turn that rifle into cold, hard cash. Shooter Supply, Hickson. Shooters Supply, Hickson.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
This is Thomas DeMoss with Keller Williams Realty. I am a realtor in Chattanooga. We list and sell homes, work with buyers, work with home sellers. I have been involved in real estate for over 10 years. My background is as a real estate investor. That is what I bring to the table, is that real estate investor mindset. My job is to help you sell your house for the most money, employing the best marketing strategy and walking you through what can be a rather stressful process. So we are encouraging people who are on the fence or even thought about selling their house to give us a call. There's no obligation. We're just here to kind of have a conversation, let people know what the process is like, what the market is like, what values they can expect to receive. We work with buyers as well. I also have a buyer's agent that works exclusively with my buyers because we want to give our clients as much attention as we can. My cell phone number is 423-364-0028. Our website is northriverpropertygroup.com. That's northriverpropertygroup.com. We'd love for you guys to call us.
Hi, I'm David Crockett, and I'm here with David Tulis, and we're having a little discussion over who's the number one Nooga centrist. If you want to keep up with free market ideas, then read Nooganomics.com. David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose here on Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. The roads are wet. It just rained. It's not raining over here anymore, over in Hickson. But if it is raining where you are and the roads are still wet, just go ahead and drive safely. If you could, please, I would greatly appreciate that. You know that I like all of you people, and I like it when you listen to the show. You kind of have to be safe and sound to do that. I'm not operating purely in my own self-interest, but I am operating somewhat in my own self-interest. Lucky Whitehead is the most unlucky man that ever walked this earth, it feels like. It's almost like being nicknamed Lucky incited all the bad luck in the world. It's just congregated around Lucky Whitehead, a man I feel like we should no longer call Lucky, right? Like, there are some people, they live up to their name. There was a basketball player in the NBA. He used to play for the Spurs. His name is Speedy Claxton. Like, Speedy, you name a kid Speedy, best. You know what I mean? Like, you name someone Speedy, you have the brazen and the brawn and the audaciousness to name someone Speedy. They better be fast. And Speedy Claxton was actually fast. Usain Bolt, right? Which is even better because it's the last name. So you didn't even know he was going to be that way. But Usain Bolt couldn't have been anything but fast. Can you imagine a slow dude named Usain Bolt? That wouldn't have worked. I promise you that wouldn't have worked. Granted, we did have some bad Bolt news over the weekend, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, a slow person named Usain Bolt, that couldn't have worked. I did hear the story about the guy that named his sons. One of his sons was Winner and one of his sons was Loser. And Winner actually wound up being the unsuccessful guy that was in and out of jail, and Loser, I imagine because he had to fight very hard for everything that he had because his name was Loser, wound up being a fairly successful lawyer. Just naming people stuff seems to have some control on their destiny, though not always. And in the case of Lucky Whitehead, and Lucky is a nickname, not his actual name, we can go ahead and take that one back. Lucky Whitehead's actual name is Rodney Whitehead, and we should just go ahead and call Lucky Rodney. Because here's what happened to Rodney Whitehead this summer. His dog was kidnapped. He lost his dog. It was stolen from him. And then there was a ransom video about what he needed to do to get his dog back that came out on the internet. And it was like a Houston rapper that took his dog and wanted a ransom. It was just so bizarre and strange. I couldn't even begin to wrap my mind around the entire situation. And then before I even get the chance to wrap my mind around that situation, I didn't even talk about it on this show because it was just like, okay, some dude had his dog taken for ransom, which is a crazy side note, but not worth, bringing up in Chattanooga. But then there was a warrant out for his arrest for a crime that he did not commit. Right? Like, there's a warrant out for Lucky Whitehead's arrest for a crime that he did not commit, which I imagine is deeply frustrating. And then the Dallas Cowboys released him before he even got the chance to clear his name for this crime that he didn't commit. So he loses his dog. His dog was taken for ransom. He has to get his dog back. Then he gets arrested for a crime that he did not commit and loses his job based on being arrested for this crime that he did not commit. And now, playing with the New York Jets, Lucky Whitehead has broken his foot. And at some point, when do you stop calling a person their nickname when their nickname turns out to not be true? Because usually this is how this goes, right? Like, some people have a nickname and the nickname just sticks, right? Like, I had a friend got nicknamed Fats. And why did he get nicknamed Fats? Well, he was fat. That's why. But then he lost a bunch of weight. And now what do we call you? Do we still call you Fats if you're not fat anymore? Well, yes, actually we can. And we did. We continue to call him Fats forever. For the rest of the time that any of us knew him, we continue to call him Fats. We just don't know how it is that these nicknames stick. But I will say this. Some nicknames you do have to rescind. Some nicknames you do have to take back. Lucky Whitehead, Lucky is one of those nicknames you need to take back. Because if Lucky is very unlucky, it could be that the nickname is causing the bad luck. I'm not a superstitious person. I'm simply saying if a man that unlucky is named Lucky, you might want to change some things up. Just see how it works. I understand this is unscientific. I understand that it makes no sense. What I'm saying is let's just go back to calling him Rodney and see how it goes. Because you should call things what they are. And what Rodney Whitehead is not lucky. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. I talked earlier today in the show also about Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham has, like many college transfers, caused us to fire up the hype train. What is the hype train? The hype train is when you think someone's going to be good or you're going to be great, you give them all the hype in the world. We don't know. Hype is not based on anything real. We don't know if Jarrett Stidham is going to save Auburn football. We are treating Jarrett Stidham like he is going to save Auburn football. And we are treating Jarrett Stidham like he is going to save Gus Malzahn's job. Now, he might just do that. I like Jarrett Stidham. I think he's going to do it. I think he's a very, very capable quarterback. But we might want to pump the brakes on the whole saving Auburn football thing with Jarrett Stidham. And the reason why I say we might want to pump the brakes on the whole saving Auburn football thing with Jarrett Stidham is that the sample size that we have to use to talk about how it is that Jarrett Stidham is supposed to be the savior of Auburn football is incredibly small and limited to a bunch of bad defensive Big 12 teams. And when I say a bunch, I actually mean a handful. Right? This is the resume of one true freshman starter, Jarrett Stidham. Kansas State, 120th versus the pass, 93rd scoring defense. He played Oklahoma, 34th versus the pass, 28th scoring defense. Oklahoma State, 94th versus the pass, 88th scoring defense. Now, granted, Oklahoma is the only good defensive team in that bunch of teams. And in that game, Jarrett Stidham did look good, won the game, 16 of 27 passing, 250 yards, and 2 touchdowns, as well as 2 INTs. So he's capable of playing against good defenses. Is he capable of playing against elite SEC defenses? We don't know. We've never actually seen it. And this is the problem, is that we have gone ahead and put the crown on the head of young Jarrett Stidham, and we have not actually seen what he is capable of doing. Right? And seeing him in practice is not the same thing as seeing what it is that he is capable of doing. Seeing him throw the ball in practice tells us he's pretty good. It's a good sign when a guy is good in practice. He got off to a rocky start, but he's done pretty well ever since then, and the reports of Jarrett Stidham look good. I've seen some video of Jarrett Stidham. The man, when he throws the ball jumps off of his arm in exactly the satisfying way that an NFL scout would like for the ball to jump off your arm. He's a distant fifth in preseason Heisman Trophy voting, or at least the handicapping of the Heisman Trophy voting, right? The Vegas has him ranked 5th. I think that that's cool, but like under what circumstances, with what evidence do we have to prove that all of these things are true? And then I sat down and realized, we don't have any proof. We don't know anything about Jarrett Stidham, not a thing at all. And this is a problem when it comes down to the fact that we are crowning the guy as this person that's going to be the thing that Auburn needed all along. They're one quarterback away from really challenging Alabama, even though there was a number of dysfunctional things that happened with that team last year, one of which was the head coach, Gus Malzahn, who was one call away from losing his job, right? Like last year, Auburn versus LSU comes down to basically the last play of the game, and was originally towards LSU, and then upon further review, Auburn gets the dub. That's how close Gus Malzahn was to not being employed at that school anymore. He was a call away. He was a call away. Jarrett Stidham is supposed to fix all of that, which is a little bit unfair. No, to put all that on the back of a guy who came in, but there's nothing that we do more than overhype Power 5 transfers and recruits. If a guy's a 4-star or 5-star, we put the world of expectation on that kid's back. All the while somehow failing to realize, like, no, this person is a kid. This person is young. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of calling someone that young a bust. Like, really, we knew you had a lot of potential, but just this idea that you could somehow know and or guarantee how well someone is doing, how well someone can help your team, how much, to what level, you know, giving someone a 4-star or 5-star rating is supposed to help with that guidance, but if a student fails, if a student athlete fails on the athlete sides of things, I just have trouble calling that person a bust in the way that they don't make any money. They're an amateur. They don't make money doing this. I don't mind calling the number 1 overall pick in the draft a bust, but he's making money. Like, if you don't do your job well, someone could and should come down on you. High school kids, college guys, I have a lot of trouble coming down on those guys, but how do you not come down on these guys when you've put the world of expectations on their backs? And for better or worse, this is what we have done to Jarrett Stidham. We have put the world of expectations on his back. He's been named the starter by Gus Malzahn, which I think at least is good, because Gus Malzahn was doing this, well, maybe he'll make the roster thing. And like that I think hurts your quarterback. You hurt his psyche. You hurt the fan base, because we all know you're just jerking us around at this point. I'm not a big fan of the will he, won't he, maybe he'll be the starter if you know that guy's going to be the starter. But is Jarrett Stidham going to save Auburn football? I don't know. You don't know. Gus doesn't know. None of us know. We aren't talking about Auburn here. We're talking about a school that has not had a 3,000-yard passer in 20 years. Showing up and passing at Auburn, even if your head coach is Gus Malzahn, is not exactly an easy task. And by the way, this is Gus Malzahn, who's leading Auburn all the way to 110th in passing offense. Okay, we're not exactly talking about a man who has turned this team into some kind of world beater, but Jarrett Stidham does have the proper combination of athleticism, speed, arm strength, and accuracy that you would look for in a Gus Malzahn system. So we're hoping for something good. We've got our fingers crossed for something good. I'm saying if you go any further than that, you might be a little bit crazy. There was some part of me that really wanted to double down on the whole Jarrett Stidham thing, because I watched Jarrett Stidham when he played at Baylor, because I watched an alarming number of Big 12 football games. And so I watched him play, and I was very impressed, and I was very excited that he was coming to the SEC so that I continue to watch a guy that I like. But I will be fair in saying that I watched the guy play for exactly 4 football games, right? The one that he came into and the 3 that he started. I haven't watched him play very much. Neither of you. Did we forget that we overhyped Jeremy Johnson last year as well, right? And I hesitate to call that man a bust. He never put those expectations on himself. We put those expectations on him. But I will say that he didn't live up to the hype. And that's not his fault. There was a lot of hype. We put a whole lot of expectations on the back of a young guy who may or may not have been really great at the position that he was trying to play. It turned out that no, he wasn't particularly successful at it. But why put all those expectations on in the first place? How about we pump the brakes before the hype train leaves the station? Let's see what Auburn can do against Clemson. Let's see what Auburn can do against Clemson's defense, which, by the way, is still really good. If Auburn can move the ball, if they can look like a sound, competent offense, then even if they don't win the game, I will personally fire up the hype train myself if Jarrett Stidham looks good. But let's see if the guy looks good. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Steve Spurrier thinks that Antonio Callaway might be on his last chance. And I'm not entirely certain how many more chances is it that Antonio Callaway can have. And are you certain that Antonio Callaway is on his last chance? Because I would have thought that Antonio Callaway's last chance was his last chance. When Steve Spurrier was on Sirius XM College Sports Nation talking about Antonio Callaway, he said, quote, obviously Antonio Callaway has had several incidents now that people are wondering, when's he going to straighten up? I've got a feeling this might be his last chance to really straighten up. He's a heck of a player, and the Gators need him out there. But the Gators have got a lot of good receivers also, which they do. But Antonio Callaway is their best one. And look, I find it difficult to believe, or I find it very difficult to believe that college football is about molding young men. I find it difficult to believe that college football is about morality. When you have a conversation about Antonio Callaway, you wind up talking about the fact that, yeah, the Gators need him out there, is what Steve Spurrier wound up saying. And Spurrier also went on to say that, quote, I think we've got enough ball players that are ready to face Michigan, and the outcome will not be affected by this. And I agree, by the way. I actually think that Michigan's secondary can be tested, and there's enough good receivers on that team. But the fact that you have to mention that, the fact that when we're trying to talk about whether or not Antonio Callaway is going to get his act together, you have to talk about his impact on the team, and you have to talk about whether or not the team needs him, seems to be counterproductive to the argument and to the idea that you are helping young guys grow. Those two things seem to be opposing things. How many more chances is Antonio Callaway going to get? Depends on how talented they think he is. I have a problem with that. Because I want to live in a world where when people do something wrong, they get punished for doing something wrong. You don't get more chances based on your talent. You have more chances based on your potential. And I'm all about second chances. I'm all about mercy. But mercy isn't something you give to somebody because they have talent. Mercy isn't something you give to somebody because they have potential. Mercy is something you give to somebody because you want to give mercy. Because you empathize with them. Or sympathize with them. Or you just like them. Right? Whatever your reason is, if your reason is merit-based, then that's not mercy. You're just giving a guy privileges for having talent. Which undermines the very concept of justice. It undermines the very concept of discipline. It does. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. I have trouble believing that those two things are connected, is all I'm saying. When you have to talk about, well, they'll be ready to go to play Michigan, when you're talking about whether or not a guy is going to straighten up his act, then you are talking about two different things, two things that conflict. How many chances does Antonio Callaway get? How many chances does Ezekiel Elliott get? How many chances do any of these guys get? How talented are they? Right? Even the arguments surrounding Colin Kaepernick and whether or not he should be back in the NFL starting on a team tends to circle around at some point about how talented is Colin Kaepernick. If Colin Kaepernick were a better quarterback, because I think Colin Kaepernick's pretty good, but I don't think he's great. If Colin Kaepernick were a better quarterback, we don't have this conversation. But that doesn't seem right to me. That a guy who's perfectly capable of playing the position but isn't the greatest at it is being blackballed for having a stance, a political stance, when guys who literally kill people and dogs and rape get in the league. It's about talent. And that seems like a really bad way to go about setting around a culture for a locker room and disciplining a team and everything else that stems from that. That you're able to give someone more leeway because you believe them to be more talented. If that doesn't seem wrong to you, then I don't know how to help you. someone needs to understand this, right? Like, you cannot say right is right and wrong is wrong, and if you do something, you deserve to be punished. But you can help me win on Saturdays and Sunday. That's not how this stuff ought to work. Either you punish the guy or you don't punish the guy, right? And I was always upset with Kevin Sumlin when he suspended Johnny Manziel for that half a game that he suspended him for. And this idea that you're trying to discipline him, but also you need him to help you win football games. Be straight up with us and tell us, look, he's going to help us win. I'm going to try and discipline him in other ways, but I need him out on the field. But you won't be straight up with us about it. You won't tell us that the reason why the punishments that you're handing out are watered down and make no sense and are weak is because you want to win. That is actually your priority, not discipline and not making men. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Thank you for joining me today and making me a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you giving me a listen. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 24 hours. Stop the Jarrett Stidham hype train.
In-depth traffic, news, and information.